Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. It's Wednesday, October 25th, 2023, and today we're bringing you three questions we've been hearing from international educators over the last 7 days. And as we do each week, we take our news stories from our newsletter each week that comes out on Mondays called All the SMIE News Fit to Share. And we look at the themes of what's happening out there in international education. And we kind of distill down those news stories into three themes or questions that we answer here on Wednesdays. And for those of you who are eager to subscribe to that newsletter so that you get that in your email inbox Monday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern, I've just dropped the link to our website, smieconsulting.org/subscribe. And then you'll also have on that site, you just put in your information, scroll down to the information to subscribe and drop in those details, and you'll get that newsletter in your email inbox every Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. The most recent edition of the newsletter, the link will be also in the comments section on all the different platforms that SMIE has, so on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and LinkedIn. We're also going to be launching on our Instagram channel as well through lives. But we're glad that you're part of the conversation here today, and thanks for joining in today, Moses. And in what we'll do today, if you don't like the email version and you just prefer to get your email on the run or get your editions on the run, I'll also drop the link to a LinkedIn version of our newsletter. Between the email version and the LinkedIn version, we now have weekly over 1,400 subscribers to the newsletter. So we're really pleased and just humbled by the number of folks that are making this newsletter, SMIE Consulting, all the SMIE News Fit to Share, a part of their regular weekly international edification. And in case you're wondering what SMIE stands for, that's Social Media and International Education Consulting. For the last year and a half, I've been very fortunate to have been employed full-time by the University of Nevada, Las Vegas as their Director of Global Recruitment and Partnerships. And as part of my role at the university, I've been doing these live chats and the newsletter for the last almost over 6 years now, and now I've been able to continue doing that as part of, in addition to the work that I do for UNLV, and often I talked about them here on the channel as we grapple with some of the issues that we're dealing with each week in international education. So thanks so much for being a part of the conversation. Again, for those who watch us live here on Wednesday afternoons, really grateful for you making time for us. I know it's not easy to watch live, depending on where you are in the world and what time it is in your part of the world. But we really appreciate you making an effort to include this in your international edification. And also those who watch on repeat, either on any of the social channels or listen to the audio-only podcast version, which is available on all major podcast providers. Just look for SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup, and we'll be popping up there in your podcast feeds. So let's get right to our questions of the week. First up, are you happy with how stealth prospects see your site? Now, this is one of those topics that I absolutely love because it combines two of my favorite passions in life, social media, in professional life at least, social media and digital formats and international education. So digital communication channels have become absolute prime channels for how we communicate with prospective audiences around the world. But what we've seen over the last 20 years or so, as internet penetration rates increased, as availability of access to our information online is increased, we are beset by this phenomenon we call in the U.S. Stealth applicants. These are folks who, the first point of contact we usually have a contact list, prospect list that we've been cultivating, sending messages to over the months since we bought their names or met with them in person or collected a test score, whatever it might be. Those communications oftentimes, for those that we already know about, there's a standard process we put them in our communication flows and all that. But there are many more students, prospective students, who find out information about us online that we never know that they're interested until they apply. And that's stealth applicant phenomenon. But let's push it back a little bit and talk about these stealth prospects. All the hits your website gets, all the journeys that people visit your website take to get to information that they need. It leaves you wondering, web managers all around the world are familiar with this concept, is that journey, prospect journey through your website. And how long do they spend on your site? What pages do they interact with? How likely are they? Did they fill out a contact form where they would actually get more information? Or did they just do research about your institution from what they see and can find from the main links to your content online on your web pages? So there are two particular articles I'm referencing related to this topic this week. One is from ICEF Monitor that talks about how good homepage design can encourage stealth applicants toward enrollment. And the other is an upcoming webinar related to that on Google search for prospective students, the impact of it. And ask the question, are you curious about the fate of individuals or prospective students who are newly introduced to your school through search engine results and website content? So that's related topics. So that's a 3 enrollment marketing session that's coming up actually tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. So if you're available, and have the interest in this and SEO and that kind of thing is part of your portfolio at your institutions, or pass it along to someone who does have that responsibility. I think it's a useful exercise to have someone at that conversation, at that webinar, to at least get registered and get the information, recordings of the session, slides, whatever it might be that they're putting out for this. But that session obviously talks about Google searches. So that's how most students find you, is they search for institutions, either colleges in the United States, or maybe they do know about your institution. They've heard about you before, but they search for you by name. And then one of the first things, hopefully, that pops up if your SEO folks are at your institution are doing their jobs, is your institutional URL, www.yourinstitution.edu. And if it's international students, maybe there's a /international piece or website link off your main page. But I guess obviously what we're talking about here is, are the first impressions international students get, the prospective international students, before they're even on your radar, are those first impressions the ones you want them to have that put your institution's best, what I call, web foot forward? And I did a session about this topic back in 2006 when I was at Ball State in Indiana. It was a regional NAFSA conference. I know this is the season for regional NAFSAs. Many folks are in Quebec right now for the bi-regional 10 and 11. So it's good to see all the posts coming in from on LinkedIn and Facebook of colleagues who are at those regionals. But this is the kind of session that I've always had an interest in. Is your website presence, particularly for international students, and that's why I really like this ICEF Monitor piece. It's one of the better articles I've seen over the last few years related to that talks about website content specific to international students. Does it move the needle for those visitors to your site towards applying, towards enrollment? And that's the thing that I think we all struggle with, is how well does our websites for our institutions, the various pages where prospective international students should find themselves getting to. We hope that it has the information that they provide. This is one of those battles for real estate in the virtual world for institutions. Who gets control of your web page, your home page? What's the main purpose of your website? Is it for prospective audiences, or rather than alumni or faculty or athletics or whatever? Shouldn't it be for prospective students? And that's what many institutions are moving towards these days, is that content, that hero image or video needs to really engage the student and drive them towards engaging more with your site. So whatever that looks like. So the ICEF article does touch on a lot of the themes here, talking about the actual journeys of international students going to school and university websites to research whether an institution is the right fit for them. but also talks about how not all institutional websites consider what stage of research students are at, and some are not appealing to a larger segment of students, and that those are the stealth applicants. Again, those that don't make themselves known to you until they actually apply. And the key that I really appreciate what this ISF Monitor article focuses on is the need to develop a range of international student personas to address students at each stage of the enrollment's funnel. Those that are just in that initial searching stage, those that are ready to apply, those that have applied but and have been admitted, but maybe still have doubts or deciding between institutions, and those that are committed and ready to come. What are the personas you're putting forth through your messaging, through your website content at different stages in that enrollment journey that can meet those students where they are, those prospective students where they are? And that's always the challenge. We don't know who's out there all the time visiting our sites. We see numbers and journeys through our site, and we can guess potentially where they are in the world, what devices that they're coming with, all the Google Analytics that you can pull from your site. That really helps paint a picture of who the typical students are that are coming to particular parts of your website, where in the world, how much time, devices that they're coming, accessing your site from, mobile or desktop or laptop, whatever it might be, tablet. These are the things that we know numbers, but we don't know necessarily do they always lead to applications. And that's the challenge that we have in the digital world is tracking that process for students. The ISF Monitor article does talk about that from research from UniQuest, one UK-based company that's expanded into the US and other markets to take over a lot of messaging for institutions to prospective students. They've done a really good job of that over the years, and certainly I have a high opinion of them myself. But that what students are looking at, that they say that the vast majority of international students never make contact with the university, college, or school they apply to and receive offers from. Half of the students use only the university website as an information source before applying. So it's those students in particular that UniQuest focuses on. Okay, these stealth applicants that are just looking at your website, does it answer the questions about what's needed for admissions, what the costs are, what the scholarships are, what the deadlines are, what the English proficiency requirements are? Does it have that content all in one easily accessible place? And I can say, for example, we don't have that yet at UNLV. I've been advocating for it, and we're moving in the right direction towards getting all the right information that these stealth applicants need in one place. So that's a journey for all of our institutions. And some of our offices we maybe have our own webmasters for our section of the site. Others, you may have to go through central marketing communication offices. That may take time and effort. But making the case why you need these things oftentimes is a struggle in and of itself. And convincing leadership that, hey, this page is our main focus for our international applicants. We need to have as much of, or at least easily accessible from that site without them having to jump through 3 or 4 or 5 hoops to get that information. That needs to be readily available, because they're making decisions on whether to apply that we'll never know whether if those that don't find the information they need on our sites. We don't know that because they're already gone and have moved on to another institution. Those that actually persist and do apply, we're very grateful for, obviously, but we need to make it as easy as possible for students who come to our site, who are using our websites as their decision to whether to apply or not. That information has to be there. If it's not, we lose a good number of, probably more than we'll ever realize, lose a percentage of applicants that we could have had and should have had if we had had the right content on our sites. So great article from ISF Monitor in terms of getting the students' attention, whether they're checking you out, and certainly when they ask for information, when they apply, when you offer admission, when they enroll, those different stages in the process, having the personas that help students get the content that they need and the messaging that they need from you on your site through live chats, through other pieces, digital tools that you're directing them to throughout that student journey. Talks about the importance of using video or impactful photography, showing campus life and student experiences. what the programs are, the academic programs that students have a chance to apply for. Not being overly artsy, unless you're an art school perhaps, but that connects students with that information that they need. And that call to actions should not just be for apply now. That maybe it is, they call it in the article, the overused and ineffective apply now messaging. So those call to actions need to be varied in terms of what you're looking for, and that recognizing that students are at different stages, want to learn more, request more information, request information. So a lot of great content in this article, and ones certainly I recommend taking a look at the kinds of things that you need to know in terms of content, in terms of format, in terms of structure, that you want to have on your website that can meet students where they are in their journey, and it can be dynamic enough to have the kind of content that adjusts to what that individual students are that are at that initial, I'm just checking you out, researching you, just high level stuff, to, well, I'm ready to commit. And they all have different needs at all the different stages in that admissions journey, in their enrollment funnel. So the design needs to accommodate different types of students. That personas, as they point out in the article, need to reflect where the students are, how much money students will need for studying abroad, whether they've got scholarships, where they are in the different stages of the enrollment funnel, whether they're looking at one major or more than one academic program, and other factors. So these personas can really help delineate, as they say in the article, logical paths you would like each student at the different stages to take through the website, and to reflect those paths in your nav structure. You want to have pages, as they say in the article, relevant to all international students, and pages that appeal to niche segments from a particular country or particular region when it comes to how their credentials will be evaluated. Will like for example, will 3-year degrees in India be accepted? And whether how many backlogs you can have from India. Those kinds of questions, if that content's available on your site, that's showing recognition to those students who are in that situation that, hey, they know the kind of background you're coming from and the issues that you're facing. So these are the things that I think I really appreciate ISEF putting into practice in this article, and providing the kind of guidance that is so important for international admissions and recruitment experts to have that kind of content that could best reflect what your institution's messaging really is at all the different stages of that enrollment process. So thanks to the folks at ISEF for putting that one on. Now, I do want to quickly go over to question number 2. And this is one that I always like. We always hear and see articles about almost weekly these days about the importance of diversification of our international student in recruitment efforts in terms of where they're coming from. In the past, it was all about China. From the mid-noughties to the pandemic era, we were all about China. Undergraduate Chinese students were the rage. Every college and university was being flooded with applicants from China, and without really having to try in the early noughties or mid to late noughties and early teens. But then competition increased, and some institutions who didn't have to work really hard in the past started finding it more difficult. Why are all of a sudden our Chinese numbers going down in a different direction? And that might have been relative to the amount of effort they were trying to engage with those prospective students in market. And responding to students that had come in the past, maybe not had the best experiences, gone home and told their friends that, hey, it wasn't maybe not the best place to be. So how are you responding to changes in world events like the pandemic? Obviously took everyone off guard. But how do changes in there was a webinar this morning from the consular section in Abuja in Nigeria about consular conversation about student visas and the challenges there. And they've obviously in Nigeria had significant currency collapse with the naira, and how that's impacted students' ability to to have the funding to pay for their expenses, but also talked about the other issues related to that. That we have challenges all around the world where we're now facing another war in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas, and that has implications beyond just Israel and Palestine. It has impacts on the region, and we've seen I'm sure most of our institutions, once the alert went out last week about the State Department worldwide travel caution, which was the equivalent to a level 2 travel warning on their level 1 to 4 scale. 1 is normal, 2 is heightened caution, 3 is some risks, 4 is don't go. This is equivalent, this worldwide caution is equivalent to a level 2. But we've seen, even within the Middle East, in Lebanon, there's been evacuations of U.S. personnel from that country. We've seen international students that were studying in Israel. 253 Nepalis evacuated back to Nepal after some Nepali students were caught up in the October 7th attacks. So all of this is to say international student diversification. It is something we all have on our list of things to do. There was an article, and why this is why we put this in this week. There was an article in the PI Review, and for those that aren't getting that, if you're subscribing to the PI News, you've probably seen this, seen the emails that came through last week. They've released the quarterly, I think, or magazine, and it has some top-of-the-line articles and really more in-depth than our typical news stories each week. And this one is the kind of sub-theme of this article is diversifying international student cohorts is a priority for institutions and governments in major host nations. But how far can we actually influence where students are coming from? So that's the theme of the article, and it addresses the various efforts that different countries have made to diversify. Talks about in Canada back in 2010. In 2017, Canadian politicians criticized the arrest of a Saudi civil rights activist by the state of Saudi Arabia. In retaliation, the Saudi government expelled Canada's ambassador and told its approximately 8,000 students in the country to leave. So in 2017, that resulted in 8,000 Saudis, fully funded Saudis, that were populating Canadian institutions to leave the country. We're seeing something similar happening again in Canada, but related to India this time. There was an assassination in Canada of a Sikh activist from India who was had been living in Canada, that was kind of advocating for separation from India, for the Sikh population in the north of the country, the Punjab in particular, advocating for separation. When the Canadian government issued a warning to India, to the government in India, that these kind of assassinations, or though the evidence was not made available as to that tying the Indian government to this assassination of the Sikh activist that was living in Canada, that was troubling, and that India, as a result of Canada's reaction to the Indian government's supposed involvement in this, Indian government issued a warning to its nationals in Canada to exercise utmost caution after Prime Minister Trudeau said that the Canadian government was going to look into the details related to this death of the Sikh activist. So this has led to a call for parity from India in terms of the number of Canadian diplomats that could be in India would need to be the same as the number of Indian diplomats allowed in Canada. And this is particularly impacting international education motivations and moves, in that now Indian students in Canada, or India students in Canada, or looking at Canada from back home, are now uneasy about whether or not the Canadian government will be able to accept them into their country for study. There's the practical reality of 40 of its diplomats are being expelled to meet this parity goal, and that those folks in India that do the study permits for Indian students looking to study in Canada, if those numbers are significantly reduced, are they going to be able to accept as many as they have been able to in the past? Canada has India as its #1 source country for international students at its vocational colleges and universities. So what is that? What is the impact of that? So the largest market in Canada could potentially collapse. I'm not saying it will, but there's danger that there will be some significant negative implications because of this recent political tit for tat. So we see this regularly around the world. We saw when President Trump took office in the U.S. in 2017, the day of his inauguration, he announces what became famous as the Muslim travel bans to 7 Muslim majority countries, and that impact was felt far beyond those 3 countries that are those 7 countries that were under that ban list. That it had ripple effects throughout the wider Muslim world. You now are in a position where there may be implications with what's happening between Israel and Hamas about the implications to travel to the region. Study abroad students that are living, that might be in that region are no longer going. We've had to cancel our spring program in Haifa for UNLV for our students to go there. Others have also canceled programs. Most universities have canceled their programs in the region, particularly Israel, Lebanon, perhaps Egypt even as well. And there's danger of that spilling over into a larger area. So there's a lot, world events happen and impact the pandemic happened and impacted everybody. Shut borders, shut travel, that put everybody in bubbles for better part of 2 years. All of this is to say that diversification, and that's the focus of the article. There's some great content in here from interviews with Fanta Ah, who's the president, executive director, CEO of NAFSA. There's just some wonderful content in here that speaks to the challenges that we all have in international student recruitment, and that we're at the mercy, in a lot of ways, to world events that are completely beyond our control or predictions. And that is a challenge when we have, say, a bumper crop of applicants that were admitted from Nigeria for the fall from the U.S. to the U.S. From Nigeria. That with the collapse of the Naira, that impacts their ability to come and even get visas. I was just spent last week in Uzbekistan at the South Central Asia Regional Forum for Education USA in Tashkent, and many universities in the U.S. have experienced large increases in Uzbek applicants, and maybe large numbers of students you've issued I-20s to, but then are getting denied visas. The visa success rate in Uzbekistan is only at about 37% for visa applicants, F1 student visa applicants. We learned from the consular officers there that, hey, the challenges are real, that there's fears that they're going to return. Their overstay rates are very high in the United States compared to the international average. So the fear is that they're not going to come back, that they're going to stay in the U.S. and become truck drivers. They don't really want to become students. They want to be over-the-road truck drivers. So really some interesting factors that impact what we do in terms of our attempts to diversify. We start getting these large pockets of Ethiopian applicants last year as well. Does that mean we're going to get suddenly dozens of Ethiopians on our campus? No. We got maybe 1 or 2 this year. So we are always looking to get into other markets. That's one of the reasons we travel. That's one of the reasons we explore partnerships with agents in particular markets, that maybe do specific events with Education USA and an up-and-coming market, that we're working with national governments that have scholarship programs. We're trying to be selective in where we're putting our toes in waters that we might not normally travel in or be exposed to, but in an attempt to bring a more diverse group of international students to our campuses. The harsh realities of international education are that because we're beholden to ever-changing political mores, economic impacts of currency devaluations and collapses, worldwide inflation, to global conflicts or regional conflicts that impact what we do, and the ability of our professionals and students that we're looking to recruit to even be able to get out of their own countries. There's so many variables that factor in here, that when it comes to the bottom line of our efforts to diversify where our students are coming from, a lot of it's hit and miss. And a lot of it is we can be invested in new markets for 2, 3, 4 years like you really need to be to see returns. And then all of a sudden something can come along and totally erase all those efforts with changing government leadership in a particular country. If they take a substantially anti-Western stance, then that really might limit the ability of students to get out. Or it might contribute to becoming more of a push factor for students to want to leave. So there's all sorts of variables that we can't really predict. There's data out there that will support where students are coming from that are in the U.S. right now that will maybe give you some trend data over time. But to get predictive data, you'll know that in certain markets there's study portals, for example, their data does provide some really useful content on terms of where's the gap in terms of the demand for a particular academic program and careers in a particular field. Where's the demand not being met by the supply of universities in that country? And that might be an indicator of that's a market that you might want to invest in for either on the ground recruitment to bring students to your institution from that country, or potentially explore opportunities for online education. So there is some of that data out there that might help you in a particular country market to students, but it's not always going to be a guarantee in terms of getting you what you need. So I'm running really long today, and I haven't gotten to the last question, but that's that article from in the PI Review is certainly well worth a read, and it'll cover a lot of ground for you. And I think it's something it's a continuous battle for us all in international education, and certainly encourage all my colleagues to read that if they haven't already. Final question, I'll just cover this one briefly, and it's the value of surveys that out in the wider world. We're always beholden to the next best survey that comes out about prospective student attitudes, and when you get those kinds of surveys, my colleague Ben Waxman at INTED, he always comments on these. These prospective student surveys in particular, can tell you. It can vary wildly depending on where they are, and anyone who's got a statistician background will tell you the sample size, the number of the range of countries that are covered, that will often impact the results that you see in color, and making broad generalizations off any of those kind of prospective student surveys is not always the wisest thing to do. But some survey data is more equal than others in terms of value, and when it comes to satisfaction surveys. Now, there's a couple out there that most of you will have heard of. The iGraduate Student Barometer is one of those that looks at current students enrolled in institutions around the world and their opinions on their country, on the quality of education, all of that. But there's another one that recently came out, and it's a student satisfaction survey. ISF Monitor's article that's in the chat talks about the major destinations in the world and how they're viewed. There's an interesting chart about average satisfaction rates, and the actual top 3 countries, all in Europe, none of which are the ones you think they are. Maybe Germany might impact in that, but Hungary, Germany, and Portugal all rank ahead of the U.S. As the largest of the top 4 major destinations: U.S., Canada, U.K., Australia. Germany, Hungary, and Portugal all rate higher in terms of average satisfaction for 2023 as opposed to 2021 results, so last time the survey was done. They each increased since that 2021, again during the pandemic, so no surprise that those numbers were down. But of the largest destinations, the U.S. has come up from 4.19 to 4.32, so it's a healthy jump there of the larger countries. The UK was flat. Australia lost a little ground. Canada gains in slightly, 0.04%. So not percent, but 0.04 on the average satisfaction score. So these are, I think, more valuable. I mean, this is a study of 126,000 students in top study destinations over 126 countries in terms of where students were studying. And I think that it's finally, the U.S. has some good news on the student satisfaction front, that maybe students don't have as high a view of us in the past in terms of prospective students coming to us versus the UK, Canada, Australia. But in terms of the students that actually are in our schools, international students that are studying on our campuses, the questions on admissions process, student-teacher interaction, student diversity, quality of student life, online class experience, and career development, those are the topics that were really part of this student satisfaction survey, do rate the U.S. the highest of the 4 top major destinations. And so good to see finally the U.S. coming out on top on one of these surveys after a while, where we've seen our success particularly in the admissions process improve. And this is something that we know our process is more complicated than it needs to be. Everything's different depending on your institution. Even within institutions, at the graduate level, it's different per program. So all sorts of challenges in this regard. But do these student satisfaction surveys matter? Yes. And should they matter? Yes, because it'll help inform you as to what some of these bigger macro issues are that are being tracked and asked about, and how you can potentially make those priorities for your own institution in terms of improving, kind of mirroring some of these questions that these global surveys are asking. Ask your own students these, and are you doing that, for one? And are you doing student satisfaction surveys with your international graduates or international students while they're on campus? That walk them through the different steps that you want to gauge your institution's success in meeting their needs and satisfying their needs. So always valuable content coming out of these kind of surveys of current students, and I certainly put a lot more weight on those than I do the prospective student surveys. But really, thank you all for being a part of the conversation today. I really appreciate your time taking to meet with us virtually live, and those watching on repeat, obviously, thanks for making us a part of your weekly international edification. So that's all for this week. We look forward to chatting with you again next Wednesday. All the best. Cheers.